We're 132 days into what can only be described as one of the most dehumanizing state conflicts in time immemorial, or especially since these things have been live streamed and we have live footage of them in our pockets on the day-to-day, moment-to-moment. It's extremely dehumanizing, and I want to rehumanize certain aspects of it by commenting and pointing to some of the more positive, albeit extremely minimal and seemingly inconsequential at this point, legal developments. I'm a law student and I really care about justice and morality, and although I feel like my faith in the international system is dissolving rapidly before my eyes, I'm also a firm believer in the fact that the tiny little inklings of change and of progress and of people power that are happening are worth talking about, especially if we're to consolidate our efforts of global solidarity for the plight of the Palestinian people. So since the 26th of January, when the International Court of Justice made provisional measures where it stated that it was possible that acts of genocide were being perpetuated against the Palestinian people, 1,864 people have been killed, including 441 women and 690 children. So it's fair to say that Israel is refusing to abide by the order. What did the order contain? The order contained various provisional measures. It had three main constitutive parts. A and B demanded Israel to end killing members of the group, and the group being Palestine, and end causing serious bodily and mental harm and suffering. So it was a little bit short of calling for a direct ceasefire, but it did make that order. Obviously, Israel is not complying with that. It also, under Order 1C, used language to say that Israel had a responsibility to bring about circumstances stop bringing about circumstances in which human life cannot be sustained. And in that regard, it was speaking to the fact that they were blocking essential humanitarian aid. What is interesting is the fact that we're beginning to see inroads where different states are effectively using the order in order to be able to leverage various judicial orders within their own country. So there's a piece of legislation called the Arms Trade Treaty, and it was created by the UN in 2013 and came into force in 2014. And there's 113 states party to it, including the UK and Ireland. Article 6, subsection 3 of the Arms Trade Treaty includes regulating the arms trade so that it's in accordance with international human rights and humanitarian law. So therefore, it allows other states to prevent, or it mandates other states from preventing to provide or furnish states who are committing war crimes with ammunition. And it specifically prohibits, with no exceptions and no caveats, which is rare in law because normally everything has a loophole, the transfer of weapons if there is knowledge of war crimes, grave breaches of what's known as the Geneva Conventions, crimes against humanity and or genocide. So in a Dutch court, they have halted the sales of parts necessary to build F-35 fighter jets, which are being used by Israel in their aerial assault against Palestine. And it cited the ICJ order. So this is the first time we've had a national court basically saying, no, we cannot do this. And that's extremely positive. Another potentially interesting development is the fact that in the States, there was a case called Defence for Children International, Palestine and Biden. And in that case, the trial judge basically stated that the Biden administration was likely in breach of its obligations under the Genocide Convention. But the case was dismissed on jurisdictional grounds. The court found that it didn't have the jurisdiction, i.e. the power, to make such a decision that was rooted in international issues as opposed to local issues. So there is definitely an argument to be made for the fact that Shannon Airport, our airport in the west of the country, is very much associated with allowing American planes to land there, and we know that America is providing a significant amount of ammunition to Israel. What is another positive, slightly development, is the fact that this morning Ireland and Spain called for Europe and issued a letter to President von der Leyen to review the EU-Israel Association Agreement. The EU-Israel Association Agreement basically makes provision for trade between the EU and Israel, while Europe is Israel's biggest trading partner, and almost 1/3 of all of Israeli imports come from Europe. Only 0.8% of our imports as EU come from Israel, so it's a very inequitable, lopsided relationship, and therefore we have a lot of scope to leverage this trade agreement. But previously, the government has been unwilling to do so, and especially the EU has been unwilling to do so. But now two presidents or two heads of state have effectively asked von der Leyen to consider using this as brokerage and using it to put Israel on notice that unless they become compliant with the ICJ order, they will be taking stronger affirmative action. That trade association, the way they can do that is, they say, the trade association is based on the fact that the observance of human rights is the very basis of it, and therefore because Israel is acting against human rights, then they can renounce or renunciate the trade agreement. One other final thing as we watch as all eyes are on Rafah, and it's just something to be cognizant of, is the extreme media bias. There was a headline the other day on the 12th, on Monday the 12th, and the headline read, "Scores of Palestinians killed in Israeli raid which rescues two hostages in Rafah." So the situation was actually that 67 is one figure, and I think Al Jazeera cited it as 74. Civilians were murdered due to the rescue mission of Israel and the IDF. So even the numerical misleading in that, to say that it was just scores and completely downplaying and minimising the actual human carnage on the side of a civilian life of Palestinians. And the equation of that being justified by the rescue of two hostages is just completely unconscionable. And we have to be aware that is happening continuously, in the way that those Israelis in Gaza are being called prisoners, are being called hostages rather, and while Palestinians in Israel are being called prisoners. And there's a complete inequity and judgment and bias in the way that most of the media is reporting on this. We're seeing that it's less so in Ireland than in England, but it's still very much present. I'm going to continue to make short videos like this, talking about the intersections of where there is the slight tendrils of hope being unfurled from activists, from international players, from anyone and who is putting up the good fight and acting with their conviction and with full solidarity to the people of Palestine, and speaking out against this, against the fear of being labelled anti-Semitic. The name of the channel is going to be Rights and Wrongs, and it's a play on the word rights, because everything I speak about is going to be human rights centred, but it's also going to be playing around and probing that diametric opposition between wrong and right, and that duality. Thanks.